And we are live. This is Gun Club. Thank you so much for being here. So, today we're having a conversation about the future of optics, about where we were and where we are going. If you've been around long enough, you know pretty much the original handgun optic, or the one that was popularized. You know, all the police forces used it, all the cool guys put it on their roll-in specials. But since then, I don't personally feel until more recently that we've advanced the game in regards to pistol mounted optics, and even, we talk about rifle mounted optics. Um, if you've ever played like Call of Duty Black Ops 2 and Ghost and different games like that, we saw some really, really cool stuff. But where is that today? I mean, we have drones, we have walking robots, we have AI, but where are the cool pistol mounted optics that let you see like thermals and who's friendly and who's not so friendly, and stuff like that? Are we there? Can we get there? Are we kind of dancing around the fringes of it? Is it even technically possible? I want to talk about some of that. Some of that maybe stuff we can't talk about until like SHOT Show, right? Because that's just the nature of the beast. But until we get there, let's have a conversation with Josh Erickson of Holosun. I'm sure he can kind of explain a little bit about what he does there. But let's go ahead and jump into it right now. Josh, welcome to the show.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
No, I mean, thanks for being here. Obviously, you're a busy guy doing a whole lot. And
Yeah, this time of year is just a little bit crazy, all things considered. I mean, prepping for SHOT Show, catalogs, booth graphics, it's kind of the nature of the beast towards the end of the year. So I'm happy to carve out a little bit of time to come and kind of just talk to people and just educate people.
yeah,
There's definitely a lot of stuff about Holosun floating around there, and we've definitely come a long way. So I think it's always good to get out there and interact with the community.
yeah. Well, let me know. Hold on. I think. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. You're coming in real quiet.
While we're waiting on me to reboot my system on the audio side, can you just kind of tell me how you got your start at Holosun?
Yeah, of course. So let's see. Geez, it's coming up on, my goodness, almost 3, 4. And my initially came on to start marketing. We didn't. I mean, Holosun's a much smaller team than I think people realize. And so, coming into kind of a company that's got a lot of stuff going on and trying to, get up to speed very quickly. Thankfully, I had a little bit of experience in my past doing marketing for other gun companies. I used to work at Pew Tactical. I did a small stint over there helping out with some of the content and behind the scenes. And before that, I had a long career working in the airsoft side of things, which is just kind of a gun nerd's paradise, if you will. Now it's just upgraded to much more expensive toys. But yeah, mainly my sole responsibilities are, just wearing many, many different hats. I go from taking pictures one day to making videos the next day to packaging designs, booth graphics, booth setups, traveling around. You guys can see behind me, I kind of live out of a suitcase at times because we're traveling around so much for trade shows. But mainly my main goal is just to make things look really cool and come up with cool products and help out the product development team. There's a lot of feedback, and I'm definitely very active on Instagram and Reddit, trying to answer questions and comments. For me, I guess kind of the job for me is more than just kind of got you loud and clear, man. The job for me is much more than like a 9 to 5. I treat this as kind of just it's definitely a lifestyle, I guess you would say, just with how much how much stuff we always have going on. And I work with a really, really great team. Like, all the guys that I work with are just incredibly solid, and so it makes it a lot easier when you have a really cool team to work with and everyone's really passionate about the product. And we're just really trying to make some waves in the industry and keep up those trends of just being innovative and at the forefront. And so yeah, that's kind of my my 9 to 5 in a nutshell is all over the place. I'm trying to get back to emails, doing product meetings, answering customer service
Listen,
stuff.
I
It's impossible
understand
some
the
days.
whole trying to get back to emails thing because we've had some conversations about like, hey
Man,
man, I haven't heard from you, and you're
dude,
like,
it's
dude,
tough. It's tough.
trust me.
Yeah, this
After
this
SHOT
time
Show,
of
it's
year.
crazy. After any trade show, it's like your emails just flooded from. I'm sure different manufacturers or different, storefront guys trying to figure out different stuff, and obviously
Yeah,
there's the 9 to 5 influencer and the after hours guy trying to get some free product. It's like, hey, like at the end of the
yeah,
day,
it's
you
a
can't
black hole
even
sometimes.
respond to everybody. Like,
No, I mean, I do my best. I think it's one of those things where you have to just kind of figure out where you can get the most done in the least amount of time, I guess you would say. And
yeah,
right now, with it being trade show season, obviously SHOT Show is right around the corner. For me, this is kind of like this crazy time period where it's almost every weekend is spent doing something. It's spending a lot of nights at the office late, working on catalogs and taking pictures of new products. And man, we got a lot of cool new products coming up. So I think I'm really, really excited for that for SHOT Show to kind of start, releasing this stuff and talking about it more. And it's a full workup of just a billion things that got to get done. But yeah, I think, at the end of the day, like I said, it's really awesome to work with the team that we have at the shop. I mean, like I said, we're very small, and everybody there is so passionate about shooting, and we just make the products that we want, and it's just kind of, I don't know. I feel like if you go about it that way and have that understanding, it leads to the customer service side of stuff. It leads to just everything that we do, the product development. So it's very rewarding to see the reaction that we get from the community, and come on podcasts like this and read the questions in the comments and just kind of see how everyone's vibing with what we're doing. So it's very instant feedback. You work a lot of jobs where you do a great job and like you just get that pat on the back and like nobody really cares. But when you go to SHOT Show and you see the whole booth and you see everything all, everyone's just like, booth looks so cool. You guys did such a good job this year. It's just that immediate feedback of just like, hey, you know what? Okay, yeah, that imposter syndrome kind of goes away just a little bit where you're like, okay, I am doing something right over
I am
here.
doing something right. No, it's crazy because I mean we're looking at the comment section right now because for those who are listening after the fact, we did this as a live stream, and it's cool because there's a lot of people, a lot of creators who are asking like, "Hey, you guys going to be at SHOT?" And then you answer the question, "No, we'll be at
Oh
SHOT."
yeah,
And when they pull up, they should let you know how awesome the booth looks, and they should get real specific. Or you're going to be
right.
like, "Oh, you were just listening to the podcast and you're just trying to
Yeah,
butter
tell
me
me what
up."
graphic you like specifically on the booth, and then we'll go from there. So, yeah,
Right, right,
this is
right.
going to be I think my 12th year going to SHOT Show. So I'm a little burnt out on Vegas to say the least, but it is always a very fun time. I think it's just fun to be with the team and hang out and see everybody. SHOT Show is kind of the gathering of like minds in the industry and getting to see all the content creators and vendors and just it's a good reset to kind of start the year and continue that momentum with all the people that are there. So it's always a good time.
Yeah, I find it fascinating because I'm sure you went before with like Pew Pew Tactical
Yeah,
before, and now with Holosun. And what a leap to go from that to like marketing to now you like running the marketing ship
yeah,
more or less. And um, what I like about you, and take this with a grain of salt, is that you are a shooter. Like at the end of the day, you do get behind guns. You like the
yeah.
artistic side. You do, take some photos, and you're building out your. It looks like you guys aren't really outsourcing a lot of the product photography stuff, which you could, but doesn't look like you are. If you've seen
No,
the
yeah,
new
we
rigs, I'm just like jealous. I'm like, man,
yeah.
you're using all the camera
Yours is
stuff
actually
off.
in the mail. I have a tracking number. I'll send it to you after this. So
What's that?
yours is already in the mail. I have a tracking number for you. So
Stop. Let's stop.
yeah,
Stop it,
I try to be ahead of the game, man. Spreadsheets are my life, dude. Like I live in spreadsheets. So trust me,
dude.
if you put a request in, I'll make sure.
Man, it's no, but it's really cool. What is wild is you guys continue to build out the catalog of what Holosun does, right? Because at
Mhm.
first it was like, okay, kind of like cheaply made Chinese optics. Well, a little bit of a gimmick is it's got a solar panel. Okay, big whoop, who cares, right? And
Right.
then we, transition to, oh, these optics are actually pretty decent. Like I would actually put this one on my EDC. That's fine. Oh, is it a duty? Is it rated for duty? I don't know. Send it to Aaron Cowan. We'll find out, right? And then and then
Yeah.
he
Shout out
started,
Aaron Cal.
approving, some of them, and he's like, oh, these might be for real. Like we might be able to actually, rock and roll with these.
Right.
And then we're getting into the PID weapon
The
mounted light,
flashlight series.
and
Yep.
yeah, and now we're at the Holosun Raid, which I just got one, and I was really impressed with the performance of that, especially for the price point. Because okay, well, it's Chinese made, so it can't be American made prices. Like if you do that, you're crazy. But
I mean, yeah, for $169, you do get a lot out of the box.
for $169 to get your pressure switches, to get your flashlight that's rugged. I've actually dropped it like 3 or 4 times, no problems, not even a scratch.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh man, I beat it up, or actually, I don't even see a scratch on it. Okay, whatever. And then I was like, hey, I went and saw a buddy, and I was like, hey, you see that Tundra? Go ahead and hop in that. It's yours, obviously. Hop in your Tundra. Turn the brights on. I want to see how this works. Turned his brights on. I couldn't see a thing. Took the Raid, shined it at his pupils. Of course, he was blinded for a second, and I could see him perfectly. I could see him. I could see where his hands were. I was like, this is exactly what you need to get that.
Yeah.
Was it college word, SAT word, to break the photonic barrier or to penetrate the photonic barrier.
Yeah.
And to be able to actually see through basically the lights that would normally be blinding you, now I can see through, and I'm actually blinding him, which is important if you do duty stuff. Like I actually do some armed security stuff, level 3, level 4, which is like both like regular armed security and like bodyguard type stuff. So
Yeah.
to be able to have a tool on me, which I wish it was a handheld, but it's not. Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
Hey, SHOT Show's not that far away. I'll just say that.
SHOT Show's not far away, and you guys always drop goodies during SHOT Show, such as the SES carry from last year. That was a big one because I remember. I'm jumping around, right? I remember seeing you at the
totally
convention. I was like, dude, when are you dropping an SES, but for the smaller guns? I wanted Slimline Glock, but you guys neglected that one. But SHOT Show's around the corner, so it's not too late.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain restrictions, like when it comes to doing the enclosed SES series. Like we want to try to do enclosed stuff a lot more. I mean, I think it just makes sense for people who are EDCing. I mean, I don't got to preach to you. It's the belly button lint. It's a thing. It's real. It works its way into those open emitters.
We can't show guns on stream because it's YouTube, but like I'm looking at mine right now. I'm carrying, and I'm like, there's all the lint. And if it was with my my Hellcat, which has an open optic, it would just be coated. Just be a coat.
Right. It's just a big bucket that catches everything. Yep, 100%. And I think another thing too, it's like the female demographic is one of the growing demographics in the firearm space right now, and it's one of those like, hey, you stuff that into a purse. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in there sometimes, so it is not the worst idea to have stuff being closed. And so it's just there's a lot of limitations where the smaller you make something, the more advanced you make it, and trying to fit those on certain footprints. The screws going from top to bottom is usually kind of a major restriction on that side of it. So any like for the SES, for the MOS, like there's just not enough space to put the top down mounted screws and enclose it. So then it just turns into like, well, we could just make like an SES 320 or something similar to that where it is enclosed, but you have to move the screws back. Then we get into plates, and it's like once you get into the plates situation, it kind of nullifies the whole point of the SES series, in my personal opinion, because I love the fact that the SESs are built specifically for each gun, and they match that style. They're super sleek, low profile, no plates. You just buy it, mount it, and you're off to the races. You don't have to swap out your iron sights. You don't have to worry about getting aftermarket stuff, sending it off to somebody to do a milling job for you. The whole point of it is just to be as simple as possible for consumers, because it just kind of goes back to us listening to the feedback from what people are telling us. They're like, hey, I want to buy an optic for my gun. What plates do I need to buy? And it's just like, oh, okay, well, here's 40 different plates that you can buy to fit this on your gun, or who do I need to get it milled by?
Or even knowing that you need plates for it, because the average Joe Blow, grandma, somebody's auntie went and bought a gun, went to a class, their instructor had a red dot, said, hey, this is the future. And they're like, oh, actually, this is pretty good. I can see that. Maybe this is what I want to do. Goes and buys a gun, thinks, oh, well, there's a plate or a part to mount that like a red dot. I was told by my grandson to get that, or, just the process. Like I was just talking to one of my great aunts the other day, and she's trying to get, what was that, a 226? And I was like, okay, auntie, do your thing.
All right, yeah. Hey, you do you. It's a big gun, but all right.
Right. But the process of her going through the things that she wants and the conversations she's had, because she'll tell you all the people who have talked to her about it, the times that she shot it, that she shot this version, but not that version. And
Right.
she's going through and she's trying to get as much information, but there's so much to know. And to have a
It's an
simplified
inch wide but a
system.
mile deep. Like there's just
Exactly.
so much information out there regarding hey, what dot should I get? How should I mount it? What screws do I need? What torque settings do I do? Do I use Loctite? What color Loctite? It is just a rabbit hole and a half. And if you ask the wrong person, you are in for a bad experience. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one of the things where red dots on pistols kind of get a lot of flack, and I think it's just because a lot of people just don't like understand or read the manual, one of them, to how to actually get these things mounted on there properly with Loctite to a proper torque spec. And a lot of guys are just ugga dugga, let me crank that thing down and hopefully it stays for the best.
That's the
And you're just
second
like,
time in like
that's
2 days that I've heard that term, and I hadn't heard it before.
really
Um,
that's funny. Yeah.
David Humble Marksman, I know you know who that is.
Yep.
He
Yeah.
was saying something about you could just ugga dug it. And I was like, what? I had to
Yeah,
look
that's
it
just
up. I'm getting young,
full force
old.
manpower. Just go as hard as you can
Yeah,
and hope for the best. And it's like that's a quick way to shear some screws. That's a quick way to have to get your gun into the shop to get it repaired. And
yeah,
it's just one of those, information is key, especially with the training and stuff that we have nowadays, where people are getting a lot better information.
yeah.
It's still a rabbit hole and a half, and that's where the SCS series is kind of just like buy your gun, get your PDP, buy this optic, take it out, crank it down, make sure you use a torque wrench, and you're done. Like you're good. Put some Loctite on there, and you're off to the races. And it's the other thing too is the iron sight situation. I think a lot of people are. I go back and forth on this. I'm going to say something controversial here for a second. I don't really care about iron sights on pistols anymore. Like if I have a dot on that gun, I really care about having the whole co-witness or like actually. I don't care at all about the iron sights on the gun. If the optic breaks, I'm just going to put whoever is in. If it shuts off and it doesn't turn on, at the distance I'm going to need to use that, I'm just going to put you inside that nice square window and then press the trigger until the problem is solved. Out to even 30 yards. Like I've taken that 30-yard shot. I will turn off the optic occasionally just to make sure that I can still do that as a trained thing, right? If it gets muddy or it gets broken, I still can't see through it anyway. So what are the iron sights going to do for me? If it flies off, okay, maybe there's some reasonable thing where I could do that, but I've never seen that physically happen in my personal experience. So
I
I don't know.
watched
I go
one
back and
video
forth
of
on
somebody who I know and their SRO went flying, and I'm just like, ooh,
it.
that's
Okay.
crazy. I'm glad you had a hood
I
on it
mean,
because that's an expensive
yeah,
optic to lose. But that doesn't happen
yeah,
often if you do the right thing. It's like one of those one in a
right.
million things where your gun could blow up in a gunfight. Did you know that?
Right.
And then you're
Yeah. I
done.
mean, there's a lot of other things that I might need to be considerate of before I drop a couple $100 buying iron sights, sending it off to a gunsmith, getting them installed just for that perfect lower 1/10 co-witness. So, I see why people do it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't if you have the means to be able to, but a lot of people spend a lot of time and effort trying to figure out the iron sight situation with
Yeah,
optics. And so the SCS series just kind of negates that whole process. It's so low to the
it
deck that
does.
you can just use your standard iron sights. You don't need to do anything. And
Which
for a
is
lot of people,
huge.
that's kind of a big deal. Yeah.
One of the things I'm about to do a few more videos on the SCS carry that sits on the P365 that's on the Radian build. I'm sure you've seen it. And
Yep.
one of the things that I appreciate is red dots have a certain amount of weaknesses kind of inherently built into them. One of them, okay, well, you can potentially muddy up your emitter. Potentially, it's not a huge concern if you're kind
Right.
of a regular guy, but you could do it. So the enclosed versions, those are nice. Not all of them are enclosed. Whatever. Going down the list, mounting, figuring out which one goes where. Is this dot compatible with this? Especially when you get into start getting into smaller guns or even bigger guns. Well, this one, this
Yeah.
is Delta Point Pro, and you're like, well, which one fits that? Oh, this one's RMR. A lot of them fit
Right.
that, but a lot of Holosuns don't, because you know why. And then getting
I mean,
into
kind of. Yeah. I feel you. But yeah, go ahead.
we'll talk about that because I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
an important thing to cover. But then we go into okay, well, how often should you change your batteries? People are like, I'll change it every year on my birthday. I don't want to do that. Call me lazy.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't want to do that. I'm
Yeah.
done.
I'm a once a year kind of guy myself personally, if I
Right.
remember. But honestly, like, I have yet to pick up any gun that I've used with our optic on it and have it not turn on. Like it just hasn't happened yet. So I mean, maybe that day will come. I just I don't know. Maybe I have enough guns where I'm constantly swapping out. Where those ones they're just chilling with the auto off feature kind of situation. Some
Auto off
dudes
is
are just like,
big.
hey, It helps, yeah. Some guys
Yeah.
are just kind of a set it once manual mode, leave it there forever, and I'm like, okay, I can see that with like a carry gun or like, hey, that nightstand rifle. If a bump in the night happens, I'm not picking up a pistol. I'm getting a rifle. Like that is just my. I don't know. I don't see a lot of dudes kicking down doors with just pistols, except for law enforcement. So if they could use rifles, they would. And so for me, it's like that optic that's near my bed. Like I know that auto on is going to work as soon as I pick up that rifle. It's on, so I don't have to think about it. But for EDC, I kind of understand the whole like, hey, set it once and forget about it type, situation for the manual mode. Then it goes back to the whole, like you said, just change them once a year and you're off to the races. You don't even need to think about it. The SCS series takes that even a step further where you're just like, don't ever turn it off. It's always going to be on. Don't even worry about it. As long as you take it to the range occasionally, maybe 1 or 2 range trips a year, if that, you're getting more than enough ambient light for that battery to keep top off and you don't ever have to think about it. So it's just, for consumers, like you're saying, people are very lazy inherently. And if they can find any shortcut they can and pay for it, they 1000% will. And the SCS series is like one of those
Yeah.
things where it's just, you don't have
Well,
to think about it. It's kind of
beyond
dummy proof in
even
some regards.
beyond even the consumer kind of being out of touch with the maintenance that it requires to be a gun owner. Like the guys who have never cleaned their gun ever. They've had a gun for 10 years, never cleaned it,
Right.
shot it twice, and that's the extent of their gun ownership. But the weakness that I've seen in a lot of optics, I feel like the SCS does solve that, where we go from, okay, are we running Duracells because that's the best one to do, or are we running Energizers because that's the best one, or are
Yeah.
we? Which batteries do you buy? Do you have a pack of those? Did you buy an Amazon pack? Do you have a few of them laying around, or are you gonna have to be? Oh shoot, it's been a year. Which one do I? Who do I order from? And then
Yeah.
it's like, well, actually, what if you never had to change the battery? Your battery tray door would never open on you during the range trips because I've seen that happen with a Holosun
Yep.
actually, where the
Hey, yeah.
battery tray eat it out, and it's like, whoa,
I
no
can actually
battery's about
explain
to
how
go.
that's happening for a lot of people. I mean, from the factory, when they install those things, they're basically just putting in a battery, doing the tests, doing the QC check before it goes out to everybody. And that battery tray is not getting torqued down to 100% the same spec screws that you want it to be. And so it's just one of those people will buy an optic, get home, go, oh, does it have a battery in it? Pull out that little tray, see that there's one in there, and then just barely tighten the screw back down.
Mhm.
And so it goes with all firearms maintenance. We witness mark our screws on our optics on our guns because if it backs out, we want to know because they're going to lose zero. I see a ton of people who do not witness mark their battery trays, and I'm like, that is just as equally as important. A little thing on the side of there, you can tell instantly when it's backing out. My
Mhm.
whole purpose for my whole chain of picking up a gun and making sure it's range ready is check my witness marks on my screws, check my battery tray witness marks, check the brightness, make sure everything's good, and then I know that I'm off to the races. I don't have to think about it. But there's a lot of people who just haven't had to worry about that, and so it's one of those things where I tell them like, just put a little witness mark on there. Sometimes even put a little bit of Loctite if you're really going to run those small guns hard. Those tiny 365s, those guns are pretty snappy, and it's just there's a
Yeah,
lot of energy that's happening there. So it's not the worst idea to put a little bit of Loctite on that battery tray screw, just
yeah,
to
it's not
keep it
going to kill
where
you.
you want it. It doesn't hurt anything, and it's super easy to uninstall. And people are like, "Well, I put a red Loctite on there because I really wanted to not go anywhere." And I'm like, "Well, just make sure you know how to use a soldering iron to heat up the thread so you can get it back out of there." But there's some people that take it to a little bit of a different level, but
Right, and I've
it is
heard
important.
people do the red Loctite, and I'm just like, oh, maybe not that one. Like that,
it,
I've never seen
it,
a competent guy use red. Use blue like everybody else. Industry standard for a
yeah.
reason.
I'll put some game here. There's a red and blue mix from Permatex. It's orange, and it's kind of a hybrid between the two. I've been using that a lot, and I really like it. So Vibratite's another one that's a really good option as well too. But yeah, you can't go wrong with blue. Just put a little blue Loctite on there, and it's really not too difficult. But I think people just kind of I don't know. People like to complicate things that can be relatively simple if they have the
Hmm.
opportunity to.
Now, I'm getting some comments in from one of my guys, Cali
Yeah.
Cool Guns, was mentioning that he was a hater, as many people are, until he got his 507 comp, which you guys actually sent a 507 comp out when I was doing some testing on the TTI. And I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, this is cool. Like, this is great. Nice big window, really crisp dot. I got mine in green. I know you're not a green guy yourself, but
Back and forth
um,
on it, man. I don't know. My eyes. It depends on the day. I feel like I might be trending back towards red. I've been shooting indoors a lot lately,
mhm.
and I find that the green is just. I don't know. Red works better for me indoors for some reason. I don't know why,
But you
but
have the option, which is good.
yeah, I got every color. I got yellow dots, man. I got blue dots. I got all colors of dots.
So this gentleman, who's a fellow creator, Kylie Cool Guns, was saying that he had a different brand, one of the most prestigious brands ever, and he had to warranty it twice in a year, which is crazy because you would think that the the American brand, the military contract brands, they would
Right.
they would hold up. And we tell guys, hey, don't get the other, like, maybe lower tier optics that only cost like $150 because that's too low. Get something nice. Get you one of the $400 optics, $500 pistol optics, $600 pistol
Right.
optics, and then they fail on you, right? Which is tough. Which is tough.
Yeah.
But one thing that I love about what Holosun is doing, and I don't know if it's one of those scrappy, smaller company things that you kind of have to do to really earn the trust of your people. But for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take a chance on this SCS having a battery that I cannot remove, because that's like the saving grace of it, because you
Yep.
have a 10-year warranty. Like, because if y'all screw this up in 10 years, I'm calling.
It's lifetime. So
What?
yeah, you're good to go. Yeah, we updated the warranty not that long ago. So if there's any issues with it whatsoever as far as manufacturer defect goes, we'll take care of it. Like that's just how we do things. So, the thing that I want to say is like, uh, look, as Trigicon makes a phenomenal product, like they do through and through. They make great products. Our legacy and our understanding of even the red dot market all stems from being able to look at what possibilities there are from their innovations to start with. Obviously, things have come a long ways from the original, tiny that was on top of an LCAN scope for the military use, and now we're into competition dots, we're into thermals, we're into all this crazy stuff, right? The time has definitely come for all of this new innovation. But the reality is that every single dot, every single piece of electronics that you have on in a controlled explosion, it is a ticking time situation. It will fail eventually. It might be 10,000 rounds from now. It might be 50,000 rounds from now. It might be 100. Like the reality is that there's no company out there that makes a perfect product that will withstand the abuse that a lot of guys are putting their guns through. I mean, like I said, there's guys out there that are putting 20,000 rounds through a 365. That's an incredibly snappy gun. It's a lot of recoil, and those optics are surviving it. Some don't, some do, but the reality is that it's anything you make that has electronics and you're mounting it on top of a controlled explosion. It's just a matter of time until something happens with it. Some people, like his experience, having to send two back for RMAs. I think then that kind of goes down to like, well, how's your customer service, right? How long does it take to get that replacement? Is it going to cost you money? What was the failure? And it's just, I think that we really hit it out of the park with the 507 comp. It's just one of those optics that we got it out to a lot of people. We got a lot of great feedback. We got a lot of, valuable information from high level shooters to make an optic that kind of fits a lot of different categories. The 507 comp predominantly, I would say, is obviously being mounted on pistols most of the time. But the reality is that optic actually wasn't just intended for pistols.
Do tell.
Humble Marksman, well, so I had a discussion with Humble Marksman on Reddit about this where he was kind of like, I think that they made a lot of gimmicky features in the amount of reticles that we put inside of it. And I kind of just wanted to express like, well, it wasn't just intended for handguns. If we were just going to make it a handgun optic, we would have made just a 2 and a 6 MOA dot. You just called it a day and had 2 variations of it. But by putting all these different reticles in there, we've now satisfied the 3-gun crowd for people who want to run offsets. So now you can run an offset with a 20 MOA ring, where if you know that you're only going to be taking a shot under a certain amount of yards, you can then use that ring in particular. Max Leo Grandis, like one of the all-time greats for PCC, he runs 2 507 comps with totally different reticle setups and totally different zeros and stuff like that. For the shotgun crowd, you can actually pattern your loads to those different rings at certain distances. So steel plate inside 32 MOA ring, pull trigger, solve problem. So it fits a lot of different categories than just the pistols. Does it take a little bit of time to rotate through all the reticles? Yes, it does. Do people wish that there was a 6 MOA or an 8 MOA or a 10? That depends on who you ask. I mean, everybody's dot preference these days is all over the place. If you ask
Right.
national champion number 1 what he likes, he's going to say a 2. You ask national champion number 2, he's going to say an 8. One guy's going to say a 6. Some crazy guy's going to say a 1 MOA or something. But the reality is I think that dot choice definitely comes down to personal preference. And I literally had a conversation with JJ Rakaza about this, where I was like, "Hey, what do you prefer?" And he's like, "Well, I kind of prefer like bigger dots, but I do kind of like shooting a 2MA dot because it's nice. Like I go back and forth on it." And I think even at that high of a level, for somebody to be like, "Well, it doesn't really matter that much," I think it kind of, when you get to a high enough level of shooting and a high enough threshold where you've spent enough time doing this, the gear is important, but it's also not important in some regards. Like the people who
Hmm.
are going to win that match were going to win that match regardless of what dot was mounted on top of that gun. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
is,
I
there is
believe
some
that
aspects to
too.
it.
Um, funny enough, when I was doing some testing on the Radian ramjet that they designed for the P365, I
Yeah,
ran into some issues where I was testing the 2 MOA dot at 25 yards, or whatever the smaller dot on the SES carry is. Is that 2 MOA?
two MOA. Yep.
I was testing it at 25 yards on like 8 by 10 piece of steel, maybe a little bit bigger. It was like chest sized,
Yep.
and I was like, man, I'm having a little bit of, this is a skill issue, right? I'm having a little bit of issue picking it up at 25 yards, trying to go as fast as I can. Ricky Bobby fast, manage it through, track it through the recoil.
Right.
Because there's still some recoil at 25 yards. Like it's a little harder for
Yeah.
me. Maybe
It takes
not
a little
you.
bit of effort. Yeah, for a 365, it takes a little bit of effort, man. It's not an easy
Right.
shot for sure.
And so I'm like, let me cycle through these reticles real quick. Let me see what we got. And I went to the circle dot reticle, and I was like, dang, I'm a lot faster with this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, I thought I was good with my little, the little dot. I'm like, I can track a little dot. But even just, presenting the gun and you see it kind of appear big and bold. And as it's, bouncing, you can really track it a little bit easier. And it takes less like over confirmation for me to see when I'm back on target. Okay, ping and, get a nice, 0.25 to zero point 0.5 split at 25 yards,
Right.
mashing away. Like, can we do that and actually get hits? Yes, with that dot, it's a little easier. So
And
I was
I
glad to
try to
have it.
explain to people like all the time where it's, people are like, well, I don't like the multi reticle system. I only run a 2 MOA dot, so that's a feature that I don't need. And I ask them, how often do you go shooting with friends? Have you ever taken the missus out shooting? I guarantee you that if you put that circle reticle on there, she's going to be able to pick that gun up and find it a lot faster than if you just have that 2 MOA dot. And all you have to do is hold the minus button, and it is right back to what you like to shoot. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that difficult to swap back and forth, and it offers you the ability to possibly train somebody that's trying to get into firearms or that's familiar with it. And if you want to be super fast at a super close distance, that 32 MOA ring is very quick for getting on target very, very fast. So it's, self-defense shooting kind of situations. We know it's going to be 10 yards and under. That ring is it's not that big. Like you can find it very quickly and get on target. So me personally, I think I'm at a point where my shooting career where I just try to keep things as simple as possible. I'm a 2 MOA dot all day, every gun, all guns, and I don't really try to mix it up that much. I mean, occasionally I will, but for the most part, I really don't. On my rifles, it goes back and forth. There are some days where I'm like, hey, that 65 MOA ring is really nice. I'm doing 50-yard, bill drills or something, and I'm just trying to keep it everything simple and centered. But like I still run a 2 MOA dot on those ones as well too. Like I really don't have too much of an issue. I have been experimenting more with the 6 MOA dots on the small guns. I kind of like it. It's very fast. It's quick to pick up. It's easy,
Yeah.
and 6 MOA is it's not that big. I mean, at the distances and the accuracy that I can put down on a pistol, it's inconsequential. Like it matters more if I had coffee that morning than it does what dot size I'm using.
Did you
I'm
get a
just
good
being
night's
like,
rest?
yeah. How were your eyes? Were you tired? Like that matters way more than people try to put. Way more than people realize. I think people spend a lot of time trying to be incredibly accurate with handguns, which is just like a wild thing for me, unless you're like some kind of a bullseye shooter or something. Because like
Mm-hmm.
acceptable accuracy on an A zone target for USPSA and getting your shots where you want them in a certain time threshold, it's I don't know. To me, that's more than acceptable. If I'm still hitting a man-sized target 6 times in under 2 seconds, I'm pretty cool with that. I don't, I don't know that I need to stack those rounds perfectly on top of one another. So for me,
Right.
I'd
And
rather
we
go
always
shooting.
push to, a higher and higher level.
Yeah,
And speaking of that, and I do still want to get to the K cut and kind of what the issue is with that,
yeah,
because you guys are in love with that K cut. But let's talk a little bit about the I guess the development of the 507 comp, which I think is that one of your more successful dots that's out there, like in regards to
Oh,
like,
by far. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty much always back ordered. Trying to keep enough in stock is bar none, kind of one of the the biggest issues with that
I
product, I
mean,
would
we,
say.
we all thought the EPS carry was a big deal, and then that came out, and it's like, okay, yeah.
I mean, yeah, those are two products that I got the opportunity to launch from marketing side of things. And for me, marketing is very simple for me. I understand the Michael Jordan approach. People want to wear the shoes that Michael Jordan is wearing when he wins a championship. People look to experts for the gear that they use, bar none. Influencers are influential for a reason, and people look to them to find answers to questions that they have, and they want to run the same gear that somebody who's been there and done that, so to speak. You know what I mean? And so for me, getting those optics out to the right people and saying, hey, I want you to try this. I want you to let me know your feedback. Anytime I send something out for marketing, there is zero request for, hey, feature set that I want you to talk about. Please mention the price. Talk about
So you're
this.
not a
Talk about
light
that.
what?
I don't do that. I mean, when you asked for a light, what did I say? Got you. I'll send you one. And that was it. There was no, hey, back and forth. Here's the features you need to talk about. Here's your points that I need you to hit. Here's the marketing side of it. There's none of that, because all that I ask of anybody that I send a product out to is use it as hard as you possibly can and tell us how to make it better. That is
Hmm.
it. There is nothing more to it other than that. And tell me
And
your honest
can
feedback. And that's,
confirm. I've literally, I think even Daniel sent me a thing, was like, hey man, we're gonna send you something. Just send us feedback if you have any. Like, no, can we get this video up by this date? No, can you?
you won't
I've
see it
I've
happen.
literally had a company, and I may have mentioned them earlier at some point, say like, hey, can you send us some footage of you with the gun, but send us some footage of it like in a pile of bullets. I'm like, you guys are asking me to do paid product
Content.
photography and
Yeah.
video, like,
Yeah.
but you're sending me a product that's already stupid cheap. Like, what's happening
Right.
here? What do I look like?
Yeah, and I think, for me, wearing so many hats at the company and being the one that takes those pictures, that takes time and
Hmm.
energy. It is not a free commodity. My optic is worth a certain threshold for sure, but it is not worth me having any demands or expectations of what you're going to do with it after the fact. I understand the time and energy that goes into making a video. It is not an overnight couple of hour process. Like, it
No,
is not
it's
that
not.
simple. Spending the time, ammo, driving out to the range, time away from your family, going out there, putting in that effort, and actually putting time into reviewing something to say, here's why I like it. Just even that video of you in the parking lot saying, hey, check this out. This high candela light gets right through that photonic barrier. Turns out not a problem whatsoever. If somebody was in a vehicle and they're coming at me and I had to see if they had a gun, I'm going to see it. And for me, it's the direct feedback that I get from these people and the trust that these relationships to say, hey, if there is a problem whatsoever, please tell us immediately so we can start working on it, right? Like, some of the raid feedback that we've gotten is, hey, we don't like these rings, right? There's a little bit of gap in the rings, right? We see that. I
I was
see it.
going to bring that up,
Yeah. No, yeah. It's,
but
it's one
I
of
was
those
like,
things where
wait, maybe
we
that's just
talk
an
about it.
inconsistency in the glass because there are some
No.
rings. Is it a big
Yeah.
deal? That is the question. At the end of the day,
So,
does it stop you from getting the job
right.
done?
My whole thing is, a lot of people will take a gun, aim it at a wall 10 feet in front of them, and say, wow, look how bad these rings are. And I'm like, but what does it look like at 15 and 25 yards or 100 yards? What does it look like in a real application of where you're going to use this?
Right.
Is it more than usable for what you're trying to do? And if the answer is yes, then okay, we've checked that box, maybe partially, right? But there is still some refinement that we can do to get it to a point where everybody's like, dang, they killed it, right? You don't
Yeah.
always launch a product and it's in the EPS. You don't always launch a product and it's a 507 comp.
But you
Sometimes there's a
want
little bit
to.
of like, look, I would love to, right? Like, Holosun is a 20-person company, man. Like, there is a lot of hats that
You're
have to
kidding,
be
right?
worn. I'm really not. Yeah, it's me and one other graphic designer and Daniel, who helps out in the marketing. That's it. We have a 3-person marketing team. And
Oh
that's
my
on top
gosh, that
of
makes
the
so much
schedule for
sense with
travel. And
that DM
dude,
conversation we had a few days ago about
dude,
that
when I
one thing
when
that
I
was
tell you
outdated.
right, when I tell you that there isn't time for stuff, I really mean, like, we are running full speed all of the time, 120 miles an hour, trying to get everything done as much as we can. And if we weren't as passionate as we are about the industry, and we weren't shooters, and we didn't enjoy this, that none of this stuff would get done, man. And so it's those things where it's like, we would love to crush it every single time we release a product, and we're always shooting for that. Like, that's always the goal, obviously. But at this time of year, launching the raid, during December, when there's so much stuff on the plate to get done, we
Mhm.
try to pass the feedback up. It's just there's a lot of moving parts that have to get taken care of.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the shot show booth doesn't look as cool as it does. And so there's
right. And
there's
that is
obviously some give and
important.
take on this.
Yeah.
Hey, there's
So
some things about it, but it just takes a lot of time. But we get that feedback and we make those improvements. That's my end takeaway is that we hear what people are saying. I'm on Reddit reading every single comment. I'm on Instagram looking at every single comment to see how can we improve, what can we do better, and that feedback I have. I wish I could show you the spreadsheets of notes that I have for all the stuff that
yeah,
we're working on.
I
It's
actually
just important
first
to us.
saw you in like the world on Reddit, and then I ran into one of your old coworkers from back at Pew Pew Tactical, and he was like, "Hey, when you go to Holosun, make sure you talk to Josh. He's a cool guy." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, and then our relationship, quote unquote, kicked off.
Yeah,
But the the idea that, oh, you are actually active on these platforms where the people are, and I don't know,
right.
Reddit's kind of a funny place, and I don't want you to say anything that'll get you in trouble with the
Double-edged
Reddit
sword
community.
sometimes. Yeah, double-edged sword. Love those guys, hate those guys. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
It's a tough crowd. You have to be on your A game all of the time, no matter what,
Right.
helping
You
as much
you
as
you
possible,
really
and
can't
that's what I
like
try to
screw
do.
up with those, because if you screw up, you're cooked for like a week, and you're going to go viral
It's
and
tough.
down, and
Yeah,
everything you said is downvoted. Like you could say something reasonable, downvoted.
right.
It's annoying. But kind of
Yeah,
going back to one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the cuts, right? Because we have the
yep,
classic, RMR, footprint, and there's a few like footprints, right? And the big issue that we've all had, and especially in the last like 5 years, the conversation is we need a universal footprint, universal footprint. Like we got to get to a universal footprint. And I'm sure Holosun would love to, go to a K cut and everybody kind of adopt it for the sake of it works with enclosed, it works with this, it works with that. It's got a good mounting
right.
points. The recoil, what do they call it? The
Do we
the
call
post.
bosses?
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
bosses.
can be placed nicely, and you can do well. But when the RMR came out originally, none of those things were really a consideration. We were just kind of starting, and it
Hmm.
it was viral. And you can go viral for the wrong reasons. Just as a guy who creates, as somebody
Yeah,
who exists in the world, you can go viral, and it's like, oh, all good press is good press. No, it's not.
it's not.
You
Yeah,
can be
there are some
canceled.
things you can do that do not. They will haunt you for the rest of your life,
Right. And I think the
and
RMR
it's
footprint is one of those things that's haunted us in the sense that it's worked, right? Except we're
right.
trying to go to the
Yeah.
next level, and to fix what the RMR footprint has done, they were like, okay, let's get these like patented piano screws that you screw it in from
Oh,
one
and
side and it
capstan
screws.
screws. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
which I
Capstan
know you
screws is
you
like
hate those.
incredible. I honestly I don't. I think it's an incredible innovation into hey, how do we mount an enclosed dot on a direct mount for the footprint of like the RCR? I think that's
Yeah,
a great idea. I don't
it's a
know
good
that the
idea.
execution works that well for me, like having to put the battery up top. You have to make a lot of design constraints. And I really applaud Trigicon for coming up with an incredible idea of saying, okay, here's the problem. The problem is people don't like plates. They're averse to plates, whether it be law enforcement, military, you name it, right? People do not like plates. So how can we direct mount an enclosed optic on an RMR footprint? The answer to that question is there is literally no other way to do it than the capstan screws, unless some engineer comes up with some crazy wizardry, complex things to do it. And the reason for that is that you want to do the screws from the top. If optic is enclosed, no space for a room on top, right? You can't just drill. It just doesn't work. Like if I want to
You just
enclose this
glue
and
it.
nitrogen purge it, there, yeah. So it's one of those things where like, oh well, maybe we'll make a hood that's aftermarket that you can put on there. And you're like, okay, well, you didn't really nitrogen and purge it, and people will say, well, like, oh well, as long as the emitter is enclosed, it's fine. It's not. It's really not.
Hmm.
People drastically underestimate how important nitrogen purging is to the
Oh,
whole
fog is
system.
a like a
Fog,
dirty word.
people never talk about it. It's like a rare thing that ever comes up. And I will ask this
Eyeglasses. So
person all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, dude, I'll be like, look, that gun is sitting up probably against one of the warmest parts of your body a lot as you're driving around and doing what you're doing, right? And if you get into a scuffle with somebody and you're getting really hot and you go to pull that gun and it's very cold outside, I can tell you exactly what is going to happen because you and I wear glasses. I don't even have mine on right now because of the reflections in the room, but you're going to get fogging. And even if it's like, it's just, it comes up. And so it's one of those things where, okay, if I have to have a design constraint where this needs to be nitrogen purged and I want it to be enclosed and I want it to be on a pistol and I want to use the RMR footprint, there are very few ways to do it. The 519T uses that kind of mounting bracket, kind of similar to how the Acro does. And you can cut that mount straight into your slide. There's kind of a secret sauce Glock menu that not a lot of people know about for law enforcement, where you can get a 509T direct slide straight from Glock, and it'll mount right on there, and you're off to the races, no plates. But you kind of need to have a little bit of special credentials to get one of those.
Mhm.
And so
509T is interesting because it's almost like there are certain optics that were designed with like Picatinny in mind, right? And I could be like
I
completely
mean,
off.
that's what it is. Yeah, it's a miniature Picatinny rail. It's like, how do we lock this up and do a plate on top of the RMR cut to where we can do enclosed with the side mounting screw? That's
Mhm.
exactly what it is. But I'll tell you this, though, that mounting interface is so strong. That's bar none. If there was any optic, we were like, okay, you got to put this on a pistol and you're out of bullets and you got to beat somebody to death. I'm taking a 509T every day of the week. It is just the most robust. I have watched law enforcement videos where guys are taking that gun and slamming it against concrete walls, racking it off of metal poles. It's one of the optics for us that is bar none the most requested law enforcement model that we get. The 509T is in so many departments across the United States for law enforcement. So it's one of
And
those
I could
just
see that
incredibly
personally,
proven.
even above like the acro. And acro is cool, but it's kind of a mailbox. I think 509T kind of gets it a little bit more compact from what I've
Yeah.
seen, and is a little bit more normal looking.
Yeah.
If looks matter, and I think personally, I think they
Hey,
matter.
come on. I mean, half the battle's aesthetics. Let's be clear here, okay?
Right. I mean, I
Like,
get
gotta
plus
look good
five
what we're
speed
doing.
from a
Yes.
cool looking gun, like no lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I mean, the 509T, but like it goes back to those design constraints that we're talking about, right? Like, why was the RMR pattern decided as just, hey, this is what the industry is going to use? And it's obviously because that's where we started. We started with having RMR. We took the RMR sight off of those L cans, and we're like, hey, let's put this off the machine guns. Let's put it on a pistol and see how it does. Turns out you got to make a few adjustments in order to make it survive. But that's just what we started out with. And so now it's kind of become a legacy standard where it's like, oh, well, if you don't make an RMR cut gun, well, actually, this has kind of changed a little bit in the past, maybe 3 to 5 years, I would say. If you actually try to Google right now how many guns cut directly, like how many gun manufacturers make a gun that is cut specifically for just RMR, you would be surprised how short that list is, because everybody understands having options for the consumers is where the market's heading. So modularity with the plates, right? So now when you buy a gun, you get an MOS system, you get the PDP with its own little plate system, you get the echelon with its pins, you get the shadow systems with its pins. There honestly aren't that many guns that come direct cut for an RMR. Even the new RXM from Ruger, that's got its own little pin system, because they're understanding now, hey, modularity is kind of king. We need to be able to let consumers run whatever they want to run. And if we lock them into just the RMR, people are going to get a little upset, right? And so it's turned into a situation now where, okay, we made a gun. Now let's make plates for this. And the plates is also another secondary market for you to make money as a manufacturer. If I can think about it from a manufacturer standpoint. A plate, it is so small, it's so easy to machine, and you can sell them for $50 or $60, and it costs you
this
$2 to ship that thing.
tell me
It
why
just,
Dawson Precision has been robbing the American people.
I'm just saying, it's not a bad business model. Like C&H Precision has exploded, and that's a lot to do with the
Mhm.
fact that they make plates for literally every single gun on the
Now they're
market, right?
making
Calculated
optics.
kinetics.
They're going to be
Right.
making a gun next year, probably. Like
I
from the way
mean,
they're going.
yeah, there's so many great companies that are making plates. Calculated kinetics. There's so many I can't even think of right now. Dawson Precision, they make great plates. It's just one of those things where at the end of the day, I would love for there to be a universal footprint. That'd be so awesome, right? If we could just, every manufacturer, we all got together at SHOT Show, everybody sat down at Circle Bar, and we said, okay, let's make a universal footprint. And then as soon as you said those words, a guy on the left-hand side would be like, well, I make 1911s and 2011s, and there's not enough space on the slide to do an RMR, so what are we going to do for me? And then a guy off to the far right-hand side is like, oh, well, I have a huge gun. I got an MMP. Like, I can fit a Delta Point Pro footprint on there, no problem. So like, okay, well, we can't put a Delta Point Pro footprint that easily onto, or we can put an RMR that easily on a 1911 due to the slide width. So all of these concessions have to be made for all these individual guns and manufacturers to where it gets to a point where it's like, there isn't a standard. There will never be a standard. We'll hopefully reduce the market to maybe just RMR and maybe Delta Point Pro in the near future. I think that's kind of where we're trending towards the big guns. And the reason for this is RMR is just never going to go away. It's just too ubiquitous within the industry. It's too well known. There's too many guys out there that have machines where if they press a button, Jaeger works, it cuts the slide, they get their money, they send that slide out, and that's their business model. It's not going to change that quickly. But RMR and Delta Point Pro, I think, is where we'll trend towards for the full size guns. The Delta Point Pro is a great footprint, and the reason for it is due to the length. Now, there are a lot of guns out there where that ejection port close to where the hammer is, you don't have enough length to do the Delta Point Pro footprint. So then it turns into like, okay, well, maybe just do RMR for those guns. But Delta Point Pro is pretty awesome because Delta Point Pro uses the same screws pattern, if you will, as the K footprint. And it's just a longer. And so the cool thing about that is now we can enclose optics on there and do a top-down mounting, like the SES for the 320. So now there is enough space for us to enclose the optic and do top-down mounting screws so you don't need a plate. So we've solved kind of the Delta Point Pro plate situation, if you will. The difficulty now, though, is, okay, let's shift over to small guns. How many small gun manufacturers are there out there? It's just every week there's a new one coming out. And we can't agree on, are we doing RMSC or are we doing the Holosun K footprint? And this is really where I think I hope that I can spend more time at SHOT Show this year on some of these manufacturers and shake hands and go like, hey, just so you know, it takes more time and effort to cut an RMSC pattern into your gun than it does to cut the Holosun K footprint. And the second that you do an RMSC footprint, you cannot put a K optic on that gun until it's modified, or you have to run a plate. If you just cut the K footprint for the Holosun K footprint, you can run both optics on there. You can put an RMSC or you can put a Holosun. It opens up the door for all of your customers, and it's less time on the mill. For anybody out there who doesn't understand what I'm talking about right now or is not familiar with the footprints, the RMSC footprint is 4 recoil bosses, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. The K footprint is remove the 2 recoil lugs in the back so it's flush with the slide, and then bring the front posts down just a little bit. And so you're probably saying like, okay, well, why did you guys do that? That doesn't seem like a consequential, like it seems kind of inconsequential. Just make optics that fit the RMSC footprint. And the answer to that is, well, if you want to have the lowest deck height you possibly can with the windage, elevation, and battery situation on those optics, we need more space in the rear in order to do that. And in our testing, it wasn't necessary to have the additional recoil bosses in the rear. We could just use the 2 in the front, and it was more than enough to hold the gun, to hold the optics on the gun perfectly fine. So now, if we can take off those 2 rear lugs and put that optic as low as possible, you can now, retain your rear iron sights. You don't pop those out. Your iron sights can just stay the same, and you'll get a nice co-witness through most guns that you can mount it on. And B, it's simpler for the end users because you don't need a plate. But us being who we are, we hear the complaints. We just put RMSC plates in the boxes with the EPS carry and the SES carry. We're like, look, okay, we get it. You got a Glock 43X. Glock's probably not going to update the pattern anytime soon. And if they do, man, that'd be awesome. But hey, we'll get there when we get there, right? But a lot of this is kind of holdover from the actual RMSC optic company, which is obviously in Europe, which has a lot more prominence than we do in that marketplace, I would say. They've just been around for a little bit longer than us.
The Shield optics, right?
Shield optics, yeah. So it's just taken a little bit of time, I think, for some manufacturers to kind of go like, hey, there's maybe a little bit more demand for Holosun in the United States as a whole for that particular footprint than there is maybe for the Shield optics. And that's nothing against Shield.
Honestly,
they make great optics,
I still have a Shield optic on my Hellcat because I don't have really anything else that's going to direct mount, and I want to direct mount.
Right.
But I hate that thing. And I've gotten by with it, so I'm like, whatever. But
yeah, they make great optics. And I'm not trying to throw shade. It's just I don't see them very much. I don't know that I see them as much in the industry enough to where I would say as a gun manufacturer that I should make an optic that just fits that particular pattern. And I'm sure, Glock and all these companies get as many phone calls as we get for, hey, why don't you guys make this compatible? So it's one of those things where I don't know who's going to adjust to who, but we're trying to innovate the industry and push things forward and make things simpler for the consumer. And if we can just do the K footprint and it's easier for the gun manufacturer to make, and it opens the door for anybody to run both optics from Shield and from us, everybody wins. The consumer wins at the end of the day. And that's our goal, is for the little guy to win. Like, it sucks to me that somebody has to go out there, buy a gun. Like, they go out there, they buy a Hellcat. They're like, awesome, I can't wait to get into shooting red dots. And then the next immediate thing is, I got to spend another 50 or 60 bucks on a plate. Then I got to spend another couple $100s on an optic. Then I can try to put this together and get after it. And it's like, I'd much rather that dude take that $50 on that plate and buy ammo and just get better with his gun. Every day of the week, I would rather make that change.
Oh, no, that's a great point. And I guess I do want to talk a little bit about, and you mentioned like some of the connections in the industry being a little bit incestuous. And I know we're kind of getting to that hour mark, so I don't want to hold you too much longer because I know you have a life outside of talking to us.
I do try. I do try.
But I did want to just, for those who are watching live and for even those who are watching after the fact, let you know that if you were watching live, you would know that we put out a live stream goal of raising five different donations towards what we do here at the was it the $5 mark, so nothing too crazy. And if we meet that goal by the end of this conversation, I got a closet full of goodies back there. None of them are Holosun stuff, but there's some cool stuff like lock boxes, some ammo like Hornady 9 mil. If you have a 380, I can grab you some. And if we hit that, I'll just choose one of the people who gave, plus one person who's interacted in the stream, because I don't want to make it like a pay for play thing. Like if you're here, you have a chance of winning, and then we'll do that. But if not, that's fine. We just keep it rolling. That said, let's talk about industry connections. People, and especially like influencers, right? We
Yeah.
say like, hey, you got to be careful who you offend because everyone knows everything. You don't want to kind
Yeah.
of give yourself a bad name. And then other manufacturers like, well, you can't really offend us. Just be fair. Just be fair. Like, don't just like drag us through the mud. Like, because if you do that,
Right.
then that's not cool. Or don't. I think this happened to somebody one time. Don't let me pay you $2,000 to show up at my booth, and then you don't show up at the booth and take my money. Like, don't do that because everyone's going to hear about that. You're never going to work in this town
Right.
again, Vegas. But
Yeah.
um, like is the industry just as a whole, like are you talking to everybody? Like, do you know the Trigicon guys? Like, do you guys all go out circle bar together? Like, are you guys buddies or are you just like mortal enemies? He works for the Chinese. Like, what's happening with that?
Not even whatsoever, man. Honestly, like I can't speak for everybody in the industry, but at least for my relations, I there is no animosity towards any other manufacturer. Like at the end of the day, them making better products pushes us to make better products, which pushes everything forward. Like iron sharpens iron, that that phrase you hear all the time, but it is real. Whenever we see a company coming out with new products, it just pushes us to go like, okay, that's awesome. Like let's reestablish and reevaluate what we're doing and where we can find new ways to innovate. And when you're at SHOT Show, dude, no way. It's not like that at all. I mean, at least for me at Holosun and what we're doing, like we don't have animosity towards other optics companies. There is more than enough to go around for everybody, and it's the industry is growing rapidly. It is always growing. There is more and more people. Like, how many people that own just one handgun? Like, get out of here. That's not, nobody.
No
It's
one.
just right. Like, and guess what? Not everybody can afford to put an SRO on their gun, but maybe they pick that one 2011 that they're really excited about. It's an SRO. Then the next gun, they're like, well, I got another 2011. I got a platypus. Maybe that gets a 507 comp, right? Like budgets are what they are for a reason, and everybody's got that threshold of like, hey, here's how much I'm willing to spend, and here's what I want. I think for us, our whole goal is just to make a product that tries to appeal to the everyman and give them the most features we possibly can. And we don't get to that standpoint without seeing what everyone else is doing in the industry. And it's just everyone's pushing each other forward. I know that like we have the TridgeCon guys in our booth like checking out our products. I'm very familiar. I get a chance to see all of their products when I go to the range days. I mean, it's one of those things where you go shoot a match, you're going to see a lot of different options, and it
So
is what it
you
is.
said
Like
all of their
there's
products,
no
like they
hate.
just don't have like four products that they continue pushing for the next 10 years.
Surprisingly, they have quite a few more products than you would you think. It's just I I don't know. I wouldn't say that there's animosity. I think that your reputation in this industry precedes you probably a lot more than people may realize,
Hmm.
and that's why I'm never trying to put another. We don't need to put another optic company in order to promote us. Like I
Hmm.
can just talk about the product and let it prove itself. Like if we ever have to resort to like, well, they make a terrible product and our product is so much better, then I'm doing my job wrong. Like that's
Who
I've
did
I've
that?
crossed the threshold where it's just not, that doesn't make sense for me. Like, if somebody wants to do comparisons and the influencers want to talk about what they do and don't like, that's what they're there for. They're there to give their personal opinion. But
Yeah.
Holosun as a company and me, working here and my job to be front facing, my opinion is we all make incredible stuff. This is the golden age of being a gun owner. It has never been
Never
better.
been a
You have
better
never
time.
had more options. This is the best it will probably ever be. Innovation is gonna start tapering off. There's not that much more room. The ceiling is gonna start creeping up on us because we're getting to the physical limitations of size, battery, and what you can really do, And so I think it's why it's cool to see stuff like the RCR
Well, you see,
things
now you're
just
lying.
interesting.
Now you're lying because I've seen some of the crazy, techno whiz kid stuff you've been pulling off, and I'm just like, where do they get these ideas to have a red
Yeah,
dot on top of the gun, but also like an IR reader where the flashlight would go, and now you have a red dot handgun sight that's running like infrared, like heat detection stuff. I'm
right.
like, this is
Thermal. Yep.
insane. Thermal, yeah. I
Yep.
lost the word for a second. How do we get a thermal sight on a handgun? And what is it practical for? But does it need to be practical, or does it just need to be cool as hell? Like, what's the point?
So
But yes,
yeah, I think there's always an aspect of everything that we do that derives from practicality. I don't think that there's ever like we're just making something to make something. But then again, it's also kind of like the Geneva Car Convention, right? Where like you just kind of show some cool prototypes. It may never get made. It might just be something awesome to be like, wow, hey, look what we did, right? Look at our technical prowess. We can do this. Look how awesome this is.
the
And
thermal for
then,
the rifle did come out, which
yep.
I was like, dang, I got to get out my stuff because I didn't get one yet. So I clearly got to do better. But
Yeah, I mean, just got to make sure you get to those right emails and the right Instagram chats, man. Just let me know if you want to check one out for a review. Honestly, it's like I said, dude, it just comes down to the time and the investment. Like it's just the
no, I
energy of
got
trying
you.
to get back to everybody. But
Like
to go
I'm
back to the
teasing.
whole,
Right.
I feel like I know. I'm just saying, be real with you. Hit me up. But to go back to the innovation side of things, it is awesome for prototype season. Like prototype season for us starts like October, November, December, where we get like just crazy cool ideas, and you're just like, whoa, like, okay, this is interesting, like, let's see where we can take this, and like, what's the feedback. We try to give as much feedback as we
So
can.
are you like buying a patent or two and saying like, can we actually make this, or do you guys have like some secret guys like chained up in the back and you just like fueling
the
them up
the
like the
engineers
adrenaline?
the engineers are wizards, man. Honestly, like they are incredible. The engineers just come up with the most incredible stuff. Where sometimes we will make something where you're like the pistol thermal is a great example of this, where you're like, okay, like I think I can kind of understand the application for it, and then you start really thinking about it, and you're like, wait a second, if I have a digital reticle that is built into a pistol dot, that kind of solves astigmatisms because you're looking at an LCD screen and an overlay. You're not looking at a traditional emitter. Interesting idea, right? And so there's a lot of things them from a simple concept where you're like, wait a second, if I just emit the entire reticle as a LED that's coming back like the DRS does, that has some interesting use cases. Maybe you put a 509T, not a 509T, you put the DPS thermal as an offset on a rifle, or it sits on piggyback on top of a scope, right? Like there's a lot of very interesting ideas that come out of these things, and not all of them have to be practical. Sometimes things are just cool because they're cool, and people are like, hey, I want to have that for the pure cool factor of it, right? Like not every single gun is practical. There are tons of guns that are not practical, but people are like, I'll spend $6,000 on this 2011. Is it practical? I don't know. It depends on your use case. You define the use case and what's
I
practical to
mean,
you.
every single gun
But
that Q has ever dropped, not exactly the most practical gun. Like if we're being serious about what
I
you can get
mean,
away
the
with.
boombox 8.6, full auto. I'm like, I don't know what I would need that for, but I want one.
Oh no,
There's not really
I
much,
guess at some point that's your tyranny gun, and then you realize I'm out of ammo and I can't get any more. But
Yeah, the ammo is going to be a big consideration for sure. But it's those type of ideas, and not being afraid of being a trendsetter and not being afraid to push the industry forward and just say, hey, look, we made something, and let people tell you what their use case is. And sometimes you'll just see some incredible stuff that comes out of it. Like sometimes it is just kind of flexing a little bit to be like, hey, look at where we're at, look at what we can make. But 95% of the time, we're trying to come up with practical applications that solve a specific problem in the industry, whether it be budgetary constraints, features for the price performance, or just going down those lists. It's like the flashlights recently, right? $169 comes with M-lock mount, Picatinny mount, push button, crane plug, pressure pad, rechargeable 18650, all the specs that we can possibly
USB-C,
jam into that thing.
dude.
USB-C, all of that for $169, and it's like, I mean, that's why do flashlights cost so much? Like they don't need to. I guess is kind of
I
what
mean,
I'm
four
getting at.
hundred dollars for a scout light is kind of crazy. But yeah,
But we look at that too, and then you say, okay, there's more refinement that we can make, right? There's improvements that we can do to it, and it's just, I think that's where we're always looking as a company, is to try to find those gaps in the industry and say like, hey, wait
Mhm.
a second, why does this cost so much? Like, why is thermal so expensive? Like, what if we can take the thermal and put it into an interesting concept with it being a red dot as well as a thermal? Now you don't have that one dedicated rifle that sits in your safe that you only use 1 or 2 times a year on a hunt. Now you can just have it on your rifle all the time, and if you need thermal, you have it there. So
That's
it's just a
true.
lot of give and take with
Giving
coming
people
up with that.
options, innovating
Yeah,
in the right way.
yeah,
I did want to
exactly.
ask you something kind of nebulous, like, oh, so what's been like the biggest challenge working with Holosun, or as this guys, trying to do stuff in the market? And then I was like, nah, let's talk about this. Are you familiar with the cell phone brand OnePlus?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
So OnePlus, scrappy
I'm a
little
tech guy.
brand.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I
know.
like tech, right?
Open concept ear headphones, like it's incredible. So we go. OnePlus was amazing, right?
Mhm.
And they would continue to kind of like push the boundaries, like with OnePlus, like Pro T, the T models and everything, really just pushing their technology of phones further and further with while keeping the cost really low. And
Right,
eventually, the cost kind of got to where everything else was, and the phone was good, but it's not an iPhone. It's not Samsung Galaxy S. Like it's just not. Okay, like let's be
right.
real. But it's cool and it's doing really cool things. So if you wanted that, you could have it, but now at the same exact cost as everything else. Do you feel that Holosun's maybe kind of going on that path, or okay, we had to be the scrappy brand. We had everything priced super competitively. You can still get a 407k for like $200, and that's amazing. But now the EPS is $400, and if we might F around and find out that there's an optic coming out that's $600 because it kind of has to, and it's got a lot of features, but
Right.
now it's expensive.
I would say no, because we don't make one phone a year, right? Like we hardly ever discontinue items. And so our whole thing is like, okay, let's look at it from a portfolio standpoint. How much money do you want to spend and what features are you looking for? I guarantee you I have something in that lineup that will fit your needs and solve every single one of your problems that you have. And for us, that's about filling those holes in the marketplace. If we just focused on having 3 or 4 products and that was the only thing we had to do, we launched like 12 new products. Every year at SHOT Show, we have so many more. We have more products in just SHOT Show alone than some people's entire company lineup. And it's just because there are that many gaps to fill in the industry for innovative ideas at a price point that doesn't break the bank. And it's like, to answer the question and say, do I feel like, there's that really the question is, do we think that there's enough brand equity in Holosun as a brand to continue to charge a premium as we get further and further along? And 1000% yes. And it's because of doing things like this podcast. It's because of gaining the trust from the consumers by repeatedly putting out things that they're asking for and innovating on ideas that they want. If we didn't do that, we would not be where we are. I have the easiest job, maybe not the easiest job. I have a very easy job. The product sells itself. Like it is that stupid moniker of seeing is believing. It really is.
Mm.
You pick up a $200 407k versus an EPS carry, and you go like, well, do I want to spend an extra $100 to get that EPS carry? Well, I really like the features of this one versus the 407k. Will the 407k still do the job that you need it to? 1000% every day of the week. You don't have to worry about it. It's those little optics are bomb proof. But the EPS has some nice features that maybe is going to be really attractive for you. I would say
Yeah.
right now, probably one of the most dude, how many times have you seen on Instagram a 365 with an EPS carry mounted on it? It's like
I mean, that's the
just,
norm.
dude, it is right, and it's just one of those things where that only happens because we are establishing the trust with the consumers, and they know that they're going to get a product that solves those needs that they have. And if it doesn't, we'll fix it for them and make sure it does. Like, and
Right.
that's the other part of it too is the customer service. You can't slack on any of it. All of it has to be above board.
Honestly, I kind of cringe when I see people running Romeos on their 365, and I'm just like, hey, yo, like, just get a Holosun. Like, it's not that hard, man. What are you doing?
Yeah,
But
I mean, and like, dude, if you're really hurting for the cash, you know what I mean? Like, go on Reddit. There's always some dude on gun accessories for sale who's hawking off an old site that he's just got sitting in his closet. And it's like, buying secondhand. The great thing about us, look, our warranty is transferable. If you buy a 407k from some dude on Reddit
I
and
was
you're like,
wondering
hey,
about that.
dude, it is. Yeah, we don't. It's lifetime of that product. It's not like who owns it. That's not what we're about. We want to make sure to support the people and the secondhand market because, dude, there's a lot of guys out there that are just you're the dude at the group who's doing much more well off than everybody else. You're the reviewer for the products who's got maybe a couple of them laying around, right? If it only transferred to just you, like that would suck. You know what I mean? That's when we look at that and we go like, how can we be better as a company? Like let's just make it accessible for everybody. And it's just like I said, it just continues to come down to listening to what the consumers want and giving it to them to the best of our ability, and still trying to remain somewhat humble in the space as we do it. We very
Okay.
much, we don't, like, we're not paying for all these big, we don't pay for any media. Like, I just want to be clear, like, anybody who's ever worked with me or anything for Holosun, we do not pay for reviews. We never have, and we never will. Like, that's just not how we do things. I send you
Wait,
the
so you're
product,
trying
you
to tell
buy.
me that $100,000 check you sent isn't going to clear?
What I'm saying is it's gonna clear, but just we'll talk about it a little bit more after this. I need some videos, okay? No, but the reality is that that's just not how we do things. We send out the product, you give your honest feedback, and if we get a video that sucks and they're like, "Hey, I hate all of these things," that video for us is so invaluable, because then we can go back and start making improvements, and that's all it comes
Okay.
down to. You know.
So YouTuber Aaron, aka Armed Atlas, is coming out. At what point do you decide, screw it, I don't think we want to work with this guy anymore? Like, we sent him a few products and this is bad for business for us. Like, is it when he just starts dogging the crap out of stuff? Is it just like he's
I
just
mean,
kind of an annoying guy? Like, where is your limit, just as a human being, employee of a company, and
yeah.
trying to work with people and try to get what do you call it, seed product? I think that's the technical term.
I mean, for me personally, it comes down to how needy somebody's being, like how me in the relationship they're being, because I'm just not that way about how we do things. Like, I am trying to provide value and give people products to help them do the content that they need to do. If somebody hits me up and they say, "Hey, I got a brand new gun coming in, I want to do a video on it, can you guys feature an optic on there?" I'm like, 100% no problem. But if they're like, "But I need it by Friday," I'm like, "Ooh, okay, well, I'll do my best, but I can't make any guarantees." And then Thursday rolls around and they're like, "Hey, did you send that optic out?" And I'm like, "That's just not how things work. Like, you got to give me more
No,
time." You know
that's
what I
not
mean?
how it
And
works.
and so it's one of those things where there's an expectation of reasonableness. If we
Yeah.
send something out and somebody gives a very unfavorable review, I try to look at it as objectively as I can. Are they a new shooter? Do they really know the caveats they're talking about? Is it coming from an educated standpoint? Is it something that they kind of need to learn a little bit about? And most of the time, I would just say, like, I give my phone number out. I'm on Instagram. If you message me on Instagram, I try to get back to you as soon as I can. If you have an issue with something, talk to me about it first. Maybe it's an issue that you think is an issue, but really isn't. And I can explain why we did what we did from a design standpoint, because
Hmm.
we're all involved in the product development, right? But it really just comes down to how easy are you to work with? Are you
Yeah.
personable? Like, do you enjoy the job that you're doing? Do I feel like for you it's really, "Hey, I need this. I don't really care. I'm not going to promote it." There is a threshold. Like, if I send a couple of products out and I don't see anything for quite a long time, there might be some questions of like, okay, well, when they ask again, maybe it's a little bit of follow up of like, okay, well, whatever happened to the previous stuff? Like, it's just, stuff happens. People have lives, like, families, whatever, right? I never try to pester people for like, "Hey, when's that review going to drop? I didn't have those units and I sent it to you. Like, I need that as soon as possible." Like, I just don't like doing that. Nobody likes that. It's uncomfortable, right? So I think it's on both parties to be honest with what they're doing and say, "Hey, I would love to get these products in, but it's going to take me a little while to get this review out. Here's some things that are going on in my life." Hey, cool, no problem. Totally understand. Appreciate it. When you get to it, you get to it. But just understand, like, I need to see some traction for what we're doing together before I can authorize to send out more stuff to help you out.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of give and take, and it just really comes down to like, are you easy to work with? Are you a cool dude? Like, I don't, I just try to make things as easy as possible for everybody. Like, we have cool products, you make cool content. This doesn't need to be that difficult. So, but yeah, it's a threshold that is honestly just, it's just like I said, just how easy are you to work with? If you're doing cool stuff, then we want to try to help you do cool stuff and support both of us. Because I know much time and energy goes into making content. It's not a it's a
It's an
lot of
ungodly
effort.
amount, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
it really is.
we definitely want to say thank you to everyone who's tried to send in so we can maybe hit this goal. We're still 3 away, and I want to go in my closet and grab something for y'all. And clearly, I'm just now testing the Holosun raid, so it's not going to be a Holosun raid. You're not getting it from me. So sorry, guys. I kind of
Yeah,
like it too
unfortunately,
much.
we sent out as many as we could, so I don't have any to give away right now either. But maybe we'll see. But maybe after this, if somebody does it, we do end up hitting the goal. Maybe I'll sweeten the pot a little bit. You know,
You
that might
know,
be able to help out
like
with
listen, I'm trying to tell y'all if we can do a fun thing, maybe we can make it real fun. That said, dude, oh man, do you have any questions for me? Gosh.
I do actually. I do have a couple of questions for you. Okay, so as a content creator who is trying to like find the next wave of what people are interested in, what people want to see, like where are you going for inspiration? Are you just like on the gram like, oh, okay, I like that piece of content? Like where do you find your kind of your path right now navigating working with manufacturers as and figuring it out for what the content is that
Oh
people want?
man, that's hard because I go through different waves of busyness and family life and like different stuff that happens. So right now I'm on a kick where I'm just grinding out as much as I possibly can, creating like a YouTube reel on Armed Atlas pretty much every single day. Maybe I missed a day or two,
Yeah,
and just talking about the build that I'm excited about right now, which is like the 365. I'll go back and talk about my duty Glock because I do actually use that gun for work. So the fact that I trust the EPS on there and I trust my just the whole setup, that means a lot. So
yeah.
um, it's just to kind of get to your question of like where do I go to find inspiration, is what are people actually talking about? Because we have a Discord group where if somebody's asking about something or somebody's talking about something, there's
Oh,
that.
shoot me an invite. Get in there and chop it up. Let's go.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we'll
I got.
invite you to the Discord.
All right. Yeah, yeah, for sure,
um,
man.
and there's people I have in my regular life who are gun guys, like Watcher Tactical. He's actually right here right now. And if he asks me about something, he's like, hey man, I was just watching a video on this, what do you think about that? I'm just like, oh, people are talking about this. Okay. And
Right.
of course I'm on Instagram, which is a kind of a dying place for guns, but there are some people who are
That's
still
tough.
able to navigate that and they're able to generate a lot of conversation around that. There's Reddit too. I'm on Reddit a lot less. But
Yeah.
overall, I'm paying attention to my comment section. I'm paying attention to the people around me. I'm paying attention to like the online sphere. I'm just like, what's actually good? And of course, being like a quote unquote influencer, you're something of a tastemaker. So you kind of have to decide what you like. And I can't just make stuff because
Right.
somebody else likes it. I have to really believe it in myself. So I try to go to 2 to 5 shows a year, which is way too much, and see like, okay, what's coming out, what actually looks good. If we do a little preview video, what are people responding to? Like people really responded to Radiant's setup for the 365. So you know we're going to jump on that. How much did that video cost?
Right.
I had to go buy that out of pocket, the 365. They sent some parts, but at the end of the day, I call it an industry build because you guys sent the optic, somebody else sent the holster, somebody else sent the it's like, okay, we did it
Right.
together, but this stuff isn't free. So what can we make that's
Yeah.
actually going to be really cool for people to look at, and what are they gravitating to? And at the end of the day, I can be wrong. So hopefully I answered your question. I don't even know if I did.
No, yeah, totally. As somebody who's had to do the products of, hey, hey, we got this thing sent to us. There's that like lingering, oh man, I have to do something to like make sure that the vendor sees that I did something with this, and it's not just like it goes into the ether, if you will. Because there's a lot of
Mhm.
guys out there that are just collecting free parts, and they maybe make it into a video, it maybe gets a little quick shout out, and then it's just on to whatever they want to talk about for the topic.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself trying to strike the balance between here's what I really want to be talking about versus here's me promoting something that I'm like, it's cool. It's a comp gun. I like shooting it. It's
It's a
not the
comp
most
gun.
amazing thing I've ever done. But I mean, my point is though, it's like, the
Yeah.
EPS has been out, right? It's pretty tried and true. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe you're still developing your personal opinions on it, but do you find yourself having to strike that balance of how much am I talking about the gear versus how much am I talking about like the methodology behind why I have this gear? Like, where do you find yourself on that?
Yeah, and I think that's actually evolving because at first I was like, "Hey, let's just make some really cinematic like moments where I'm running up with the gun and doing this thing." And it's like, okay, well, you're not Grand Thumb. Like, stop trying to be Grand Thumb. Like that's not important. Why don't we talk a little bit more about why I have it? And I think that works more for.
Yeah.
I had a buddy call me up the other day saying, "Hey man, I see what you're doing, man. I'm proud of you, bro. And I see when I have people asking about certain stuff, I send them to your page, and that kind of like blew me away and reset my brain to say like, dude,
Yeah.
you need to be as often as possible bringing the educational aspect into it. Because there's people in my real life who do watch my stuff, and it's like, well, when I want to know about gun stuff, I go to watch your stuff. I'm just like,
Right.
oh, and you don't even own a gun. Oh, this is a big deal. I need to take this more seriously. I need to make sure I'm not just showing off a product, but I'm actually educating you about why it works. Should you spend your money on this? Should you spend your money on that? And talk about the value proposition of it. Like, I have a TTI Combat. It's $1,000 gun. Is it worth it for you, first time gun owner? Because I had guys comment saying like, "Hey, this is my first gun." I'm like, "Oh, that's a weird
Should
first
I get
gun.
it? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a weird first gun." That's cool.
Right.
Did
Yeah.
it work? Because there were some questions about some reliability with like strikers and springs, and did it work for you? And that's a hard thing for me to do, is to always highly recommend something. And when you know a guy, also like to not recommend something. That's
Yeah.
hard too.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what I've always strived on the marketing side of what we do, is to make sure that like all of our influencers and people that we work with have that comfort level with us to where they can go, hey, you know what? Here's what I don't like about it. Because I think that is, as bad as this is, like, there are a lot of Instagram pages where they are reading off of the fact sheet. You get a quick little sizzle reel, a couple of shots, maybe like less than a couple of mags. Don't want to get the ammo bill too high, and then it's a quick couple of shots of B-roll, and you're out. And it's like, did I learn anything from that, or was that just kind of like a weird commercial to make sure that the vendors feel happy? From a manufacturer standpoint, when I see something like that, I kind of just go like, okay, like I see that you spent effort to go to the range. You tried to show off the product and its application, but I have no clue how you feel about it. I have no clue how this fits into your actual use case within your life. And I don't know that anybody really learned anything that they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have from just looking at our Instagram or reading the fact sheet about it.
Right.
From a manufacturer
Like,
standpoint,
did you add
our
value?
that's what I think I just ultimately kind of feel like, as somebody who's done content for so long, is like, am I providing value with what we're doing? And
Yeah.
it's so hard to answer as a manufacturer, and then I get into the media side of things where, hey, like, how do you carve that niche out? Are you the guy that's like, here's the value for people who are trying to become a cop from a certain standpoint, or here's the value from a military side of things, if you're trying to go into the military, right? Like, there's all these different lanes and avenues for
Mm-hmm.
firearms. Here's women first time gun owner. Here's the concealed carry guy, and everybody's got their niches. But I think that it's always very interesting to me to see where people find that value. So I guess, my question, maybe round it out was, for you, finding the value for the people that are coming to your page, where do you feel like you want to be at, and where are you heading as a channel? Is it these
Mm-hmm.
kind of things, like sit down interviews with manufacturers and education, or is it a lot more small snippet things? Like, what do you feel like you want to work on for this next coming year?
So with this next coming year, I want to keep doing this, right? Because I have two channels. Well, more than two, but I talk about the two. Um,
Yeah.
which is, it's insane to do that, first of all, to have more than one channel when you're still kind of in a growing phase.
Yeah.
But I do want to be able to continuously create smaller pieces of content, even because it takes a lot to go out there and to record a range session where we're shooting 500 rounds. Like,
Yep.
how many rounds do you think you should put through a product, or make a product endure it? Like red dot, a handgun, an optic. When I say an optic, a light. Like, how many rounds should it endure on a gun before I can give you an opinion? And who's to say I haven't actually put those rounds down range, but really just I
Right.
didn't set up a camera because my camera guy didn't come that day, or I just wanted to try it out. And so I put 100 rounds down range and I experienced something, and I didn't bring a camera out. So
Yeah.
can I just talk to you for a second and share, and kind of go from there, right? So I want to keep doing that, but I also want to produce more long form content, because that's been something I've been. It's been a little bit more difficult this year to create multiple pieces of long form content, right? But we do have the podcast, which you're on right now. Okay, little bit
Right.
of a meta, mention right there. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, where we can bring you guys on. And even when you're not on here, because we can have these deep conversations and really kind of talk about like the people behind the brand and what you guys are really trying to
Yeah.
do. But that's cool, but you're promoting yourself. And so when you're not here, because we do these 2 hour live streams like twice a week. And when I'm
Right.
talking about you when you're not here, I mean, you're probably here somewhere, but you're probably not. I don't know, you're
I'm
doing
always
something else.
watching.
He's always watching. Um, what is the conversation like when I'm like reacting to somebody else's gun video, because that happens from time to time. I'm like, ooh, I noticed they did this. Oh, I noticed they're running this optic. Amazing optic. I actually have one. I can't bring it because we're live, right? Because you can't show guns when you're
Yeah.
live. But these are some of the things that I'm noticing, and this is what I recommend for people, or when people pop up in the live, because we got questions happening right now. People talking about morality behind the munitions, and it's like, man, like when we're having conversations and people ask questions, can we answer it honestly, truthfully? And it better be, right? Because that's all I have. Like, if you
Yeah.
stop sending
100%.
product, cool. I got to go buy some Holosuns. But if
Right.
they stop watching or they stop trusting me and I become another shill brand or what they call a lol cow, where it's like, we're watching you to laugh at you. We know you're not serious. We know you're not serious. We just laugh.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. My career is over at that point. When I say career, this opportunity that I've been given. So that's where I'm at, Josh.
Well,
Hopefully that answers some of the
so
question.
I, I do have one other question. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you feel like the shift in perspective over the past, I would say, like, I feel like it's maybe been the past 3 or 4 years, has really shifted away from the entertainment industry, if you will, of uh, full tactical kit every time you go to the range, to much more practical. Like, I think the practical shooting thing has really taken over the ethos of the firearm industry, and I'm
No, when
I'm
you
all
say
here for
practical
it
shooting,
because,
are you talking about USPSA? That's a joke.
well, I mean, that's a part of it, right?
Mhm.
Putting a timer on it, having a par time where you lie in the overall rankings of things, like
Yeah.
that's a very valuable metric for people to try to get better with stuff. But what I more so
Well,
mean is
I
just
never
the
started with that personally. And to answer your question about have I been seeing it shift, the answer is yes. I never did that because I don't have that kind of gear. Like I didn't start with money.
yeah,
I don't have money now, and all that stuff is expensive, right? So
bro, it's
for me to
bad,
go out
it's
and
bad.
go buy a hard hat or hard headed veterans bump helmet or whatever, and have multiple pieces of gear that I'm cycling in and out, and have the sickest duty belt. Like I don't actually have a full duty belt rig. I'm gonna change that now because I'm doing some security and I'm running out of spots for like pepper spray and cuffs,
Yeah,
and I need a little bit more. So I'm gonna reach out to like Wilder or something. But the question that you had is like, are we moving away from like this tactical bro vet, almost like cosplaying as a vet, even though you never served and you would have punched your drill sergeant? And are we going into we're regular guys, we're training, maybe we're training for a purpose? For me, I train because I want to be good with my carry gun. I train because I want to
yeah,
be good with whatever gun I'm seeing. Did you send a gun? I'm going to try it and see if I can be good with it. I know my times, like I'm getting better. And do I feel like I can be just as good with this gun as this gun? Yeah, cool. Now, am I moving over to, as a guy who does armed security from time to time, does this suit me? Is this like kind of a duty build, right? Okay, so now we got a Glock 47. Does that help me? Oh, now we have the new Echelon full size. Does that help me? Yes or
yeah,
no?
right.
That's what I'm speaking to. Cali Cool Gun
No,
says regular guys. I'm as regular
yeah,
as it comes. Regular, bro.
100%, man. I don't have any military or law enforcement background. That's never been my prerogative. It's just not how life went, and I don't think I would have enjoyed going down those pathways. And I think that looking at where the average person is in their journey of trying to figure out this gigantic market space
Dude,
of
it's insane.
guns, accessories, the amount of times that I've had a conversation with somebody and they're just like, "Oh yeah, I was thinking about getting a plate carrier," and I just go like, "For what? Like when would you need
Right.
to wear this plate carrier?" They're like, "Well, I see the guys in the videos, they all have plate carriers and they got their mags in there and stuff." And I'm like, "You could just get a chest rig and put your mags in there. You don't need a plate carrier. You're planning on getting shot at?" And they're like, "Well, no." And I'm like, "Do you ever plan on getting shot at?" No. And I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe save those money on those $600 plates and buy some ammo and get better with the rifle instead of the gear." I think there's been a pervasive thing in the industry of people seeing the newest shiny objects and really being drawn towards that and constantly
Yeah.
buying new guns. Like, it's just a thing, man. I just see people always like, "Got this new gun, check it out. Got this new thing for my gun." And it's just
And
like,
they
have
never
you
shoot the
spent the
guns.
time? Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I wish that posting pile ammo was a lot cooler than it was, because that, or piles of empty shell casings that you went
Yeah,
and
yeah.
shot, like, I want so badly for the industry to continue the path of education in terms of getting better with these tools, because these are all tools at the end of the day. and they are fun. You can use them in
Hmm.
totally tons of different ways. But the ultimate thing with these is that like guns exist because we wanted to kill somebody who was further away from us than they are, with our fists and our knives and stuff like that. That's the mention of a bow and arrow. Like it's just
Yeah.
that's where they came from. It didn't start out with, hey, this would be super fun if we could do target shooting. Like that's not how these things happened. And so I think it's more prevalent nowadays for people to understand that, like, look, it is so, like, if you were to show me an Instagram post of somebody with their new tricked out 365 or somebody with a bone stock 365 and a 407k and 1,000 rounds of ammo, I'm like, yo, that 1,000 rounds of ammo, dude, all day of the week, let me dap
Right.
you up. Like, you got it. You're doing something correct. And like putting that time in and actually training with it is, I think, just so invaluable. And that's, not to go back to tooting our horn, but like we're such a small company, dude. Like we do Tuesday night USPSA nights and we'll have
Hmm. I've
13,
seen you do
14
that.
dudes out there shooting it. Like that's everybody at the company is like, yo,
Is
let's
that
go
how you
shoot
tore your
USPSA.
ACL?
Let's get better with our guns. So it's just, I don't know. I just think that it's
Yeah.
important to the culture of the industry as a whole. So I'll get off my soapbox.
No, no, no. I really appreciate that. The guy who took me through my security certification, I can't remember the old saying, but he was like, I'm not scared of the guy with 1,000 guns. I'm worried about the guy with one gun that he's
Yeah.
hit 1,000 range trips with, because at the end of the day, I only had when I first got started, and this is like almost a confession. When I first got started shooting, I had making content. I had one gun, Glock 19. I had a lot of buddies who had guns, right? And at the end of my time with the Glock 19, I still have it. I was doing really cool stuff with it, and my recoil control of the Glock 19. I went through a whole 5-week 80-hour course with it, and it
Yeah.
was incredible. That said, now I have cooler guns like the Glock 45 and some other guns that
You went from one Glock. I love
no, I mean
that.
it,
No,
it was
I'm not.
compatible with the holsters.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's just funny. Like, I got another cool gun. It's like, okay,
So
it's just
What'd
light
you
up.
get? Oh, Glock. Okay, whatever.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. That's funny.
and no, but I have a lot of cool guns. But now I've gotten to a point where I'm like, a lot of the guns that I get end up being content guns, but I end up carrying them
Yeah,
because they're actually really good. Yeah, I was like, and here's the secret. If you really want to know what I think about a gun, hit me up a year after I've had it, because I don't give my guns away. I don't give my gear away. Like all the gear that
yeah,
I've been sent, I still have it. Why? Because first of all, they didn't send it for you; they sent it for me. And um, I think the long term test is kind of where it's at. Like after this thing's been bumped around in the case 100 times, can I still take it to the range, and is it still going to hold
yeah,
zero? How's the
yep,
battery life on that thing? I couldn't tell you after 3 weeks. Couldn't tell
right.
you. But I don't want to hold you too much longer because I know we've been on here for forever, and I just want to say thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Um, Gosh, I know people know how to find you now, but there's a lot of creators in here. I'm sure they'd be super excited to shake your hand at SHOT Show. And for
please
the
do. Yeah,
guys
come
listening
by.
on podcasts, can you just tell us the secret? What's coming at SHOT Show? Give us a hint. Exclusive.
So let's just say that we have some very interesting updates for the rifle sides of things. We have some really cool new stuff that I think people are going to be like, oh, didn't even know I wanted that, at a very, very affordable price point. So 403, 503, let's just say there's probably going to be some new hotness for that. Other than that, can't get too far into the weeds with it, but we do have some incredible. We got some new compacts. We have a whole new pistol light that nobody's ever seen, that has an incredible feature set. So I probably already revealed too much, but there's a lot of really cool stuff. And if you want to see that stuff, just basically stay tuned to the Holosun Instagram page the week before SHOT Show. We're going to release every new product that we have coming out at SHOT Show on our Instagram the week before. And then if
Kelly
you
said,
want
can
to
we
get
get some
like
affordable night
super,
vision?
no, not anytime soon. Unfortunately, there is a giant industry behind that, and they would not be happy if we did that. But
Hmm.
honestly, it's just not really in our wheelhouse. We try to find places where there's a lot of innovation. Night vision kind of just costs what it costs. There's not a lot of room for making that cheaper. It's a very expensive process. It's like LPVOs. People ask us all the time, like, when are you guys going to make an
That was
LPVO? It's
me.
like
I asked you about the LPVO. You said no.
there's just not a lot of room for innovation in that marketplace. Reticles are what they are. Good glass is what it is. The size of the bodies has to fit now. There's just not a lot of stuff you can do to really kind of bring value to that market space. There's a ton of people making LPVOs as well too. So it's just, we try to find those spaces where there is room for innovation and also hit a price point that people can actually buy it at. Because we
Now
could
you
make, dude,
say
we could
that,
make
but was there innovation
$5,000
on
things all day.
the 6x magnifier, or was that just part of the family of products?
So the 6x magnifier thing came about because of the LPVO crowd. Basically, we were like, okay, how are they really using these things? You're like, well, it's either at 1 or it's either at 6. I'm dialing all the way, or I'm just keeping it. Very
Mhm.
rarely did I see a lot of people like, I'm going to 3.75. And so for us, it
Yeah.
was kind of just like, okay, well, if you're going to use it as a 1, 2, 6 in just those two things, why don't we just make a 6x magnifier that you can flip up? Basically gives you an LPVO. The next part of it is maybe what we have coming up at SHOT Show, where maybe we find some interesting new ways to give you dots that you can use with that. So that will be the next part of it.
So are you trying to say
But
it's holographic? Because that would be amazing. That said, at the end of the day, you guys are doing cool stuff, and I appreciate you coming on. And I appreciate those
yeah,
questions because it makes me think about my life and what am I doing? Why am I still here? Why do I make
always try to be
content?
thought provoking. I do my
Delete the
best. So
channel.
please don't, please don't. Save this video
No.
first so I can watch it again. So
Dude,
no, I
this is
appreciate you.
awesome.
I appreciate you having me on, giving us a platform to kind of come and talk about Holosun, what it is and who we are as a company. Because I think it's hard sometimes to have the opportunity to do that. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for everybody that's been watching tonight. It's awesome to get to interact with everybody. I see all the questions. If you guys have any questions for me, Holosun_Josh. Follow my Instagram page. You can message me any time of the day. I'm probably going to respond. So yeah, it's just one of those things where that's just what we're about, man. We just want to get back to the little guy because we started out small, and big things have small beginnings. So
Absolutely. Guys, you guys did amazing. I think we didn't quite hit the goal, but I think I'm going to reset it for next week. And then we will, when I say next week, tomorrow, there's a show tomorrow. There's a show
oh,
tomorrow.
nice, awesome.
And we'll try to do something special for that one. Maybe I'll start begging emails to Josh and say like, hey, could you just send over like a little something, just a little something. So let's see. But you guys are doing awesome. Thank you so much. Thank Josh, you're here. Thank you so much for being here. And for those who are
Yeah,
watching, listening, wherever you are on podcast, this is Gun Club Radio. We've had so much fun. Tune in live if you can. But of course, you're listening on podcast. So appreciate you. All right, guys. Peace.